Continuing with the halachos of HaMoed in Siman Tav Kuf Mem Hey, let's say the primary subject of the Siman is writing in HaMoed. Much of what is said here is to a large extent irrelevant to us today, as I'll explain. There's a massive amount of commentary on the Tur, and the Shulchan Aruch ends up being much, much longer than the Tur is. However, as I said, most of that is not relevant to us today, as we'll see. So let's look at the Tur and see what we can say from that. Asur לכתוב בחלמוד. You're not allowed to write on HaMoed. Afilu להגיה os achas בספר אסור. Even to correct one letter in a book is prohibited. Now, they're not talking about a Sefer Torah here. They're talking about a normal Sefer. And remember, this is written long before the printing press. And so all of their svarim were handwritten. And it would not be common, it would not be uncommon for a mistake to be made, for something to be misspelled or something like that. And therefore, the text was corrected. There are all sorts of halachas about correcting this text. Rabbeinu Tam made a whole series of takanas about this, but that's not for us to discuss here. But it would not be uncommon while you're learning to find a mistake and to want to correct it. And here on HaMoed, you're not allowed to do so. Ve'asur לכתוב תפילין ומזוזות לאחרים בשכר. I'm not allowed to write tefillin and mezuzos for other people if they're paying me. לעצמו, but to write them for yourself, or לאחרים בחנם, or to write them for other people without charging them. Or אפילו בשכר כדי שיהיה לו הוצאותיו יותר בריוח לשמחת. Or even if you're going to be paid, but then you will spend more money on Yom Tov. Meaning, for your Yom Tov expenses, if you're going to spend the same amount, eat the same types of food, nothing different, whether you have this work or not, then you're not allowed to do it on HaMoed. If in fact, because of this extra money coming in, you will then spend more on simchas, then it would be mutar. Afilu yesh lo ma yochal, even though you have something to eat. Shim ein lo ma yochal, if you didn't have what to eat, kol melacha nami shari, then any type of work is permitted. Meaning, if someone doesn't have the basic expenses to spend for Yom Tov that he needs, to buy challah and something to go with the challah, not even saying chicken or meat or something like that, he just doesn't have enough to make a meal out of, then of course he's allowed to work. Tefillin and mezuzos, and it's only the tefillin and mezuzos he's allowed to write mishum mitzvah, because there's a mitzvah. HaMoed צריך להניח תפילין ולברך עליהם, because the Torah paskins, even on HaMoed, you have to put on tefillin and say a bracha over them. V'ken haya noheg avi adoni harosh zal, and this is the way my father, the Rosh, conducted himself. Aval shar sfarim asur, bein bechinam bein בשכר, im yesh lo ma yochal. But all other svarim are prohibited, whether you're doing it for free or whether you're being paid, even as long as you have food to eat for Yom Tov. Because if you're doing something for a mitzvah, that's a very different situation than if you're doing it only for simcha. Meaning, if you're doing it and it will both increase Yom Tov enjoyment, or it will allow you to do a mitzvah, like I don't have, one of my mezuzos was found to be possible and I need to write another one on HaMoed, or my tefillin were found to be possible. There's a boy who's becoming bar mitzvah and he has to put on tefillin. then you're allowed to write them. One of the issues that's brought up is we're not allowed to correct a sefer. You're not allowed to write, certainly not allowed to write a sefer Torah. You couldn't write one on Yom Tov. But what if the Sefer Torah is found to have a psul in it on HaMoed? Can you correct it on HaMoed? And this depends. If it is the only Sefer Torah your community has, then you would be allowed to correct it, because the mitzvah of Kriyas Torah is a mitzvah. If the community has two Sefer Torah, right, or only two Sefer Torah, or one Sefer Torah kosher after this, then fixing it according to the vast majority's opinions would be mutar, because the Tircha de Tzibura, we are going to do the mitzvah of reading from the Sefer Torah on Yom Tov. We'll use the second one for maftir. One of the two will be used for maftir, and so on. That would also be permitted. However, if we have 3 or 4, and it's just the gabbai has to roll between one day of HaMoed and the other, and HaMoed Pesach, and that's sukkahs because it's the same kriya from day to day, the same place. But that we wouldn't allow someone to fix. Now, the other thing that has to be taken into consideration is that one of the basic things that is prohibited on HaMoed, we've learned, is melacha Siman, skilled work. And they used to write with a quill. Learning how to write with a quill is a skill. It's not something that anyone could do, even in this, meaning there are things that everyone knows how to do, but it's something that has to be learned. And I'm not talking about learning how to shape the letter. I'm talking about how to make whatever you're doing come out as you want it to do. Today, we write with ballpoint pens and so on. We don't write with quills anymore, and therefore the level of skill required is something entirely different. And therefore, according to most postgames, since it is not a skill, so to speak, it's not something that you have to spend a long time learning how to use the pen, not learning how to form the letters, just how to use the pen in the basics. Therefore, many more things are mutter for writing on HaMoed. Continuing. Mutter l'tavos techeles l'tzitziyosav, bein biyad bein behalach. I'm allowed to spin wool into thread for the techeles of my tzitzis, whether I'm doing it by hand or whether I'm using a spindle. Aval l'achering asur. But to do this for someone else, I can't. Of course, assuming, if I don't have anything to eat for Yontif, then of course I'm allowed to do anything, and so on. Mutter לכתוב חשבונותיו. You're allowed to write your accounts. לחשוב יוצאותיו, to figure out what you can spend for Yontif. V'kosim gitei nashim, we're allowed to write a woman's get, because maybe there will be difficulties later, or maybe one of the two parties won't be present here later, who knows. V'kiddushin, we're allowed to write in documents of marriage. V'shovrin, receipts. Daitiki, protocols. These are protocols appointing generally encumbering property, mortgaging some property for a loan. Metanos, gives. Upruzbolin, a pruzbol. The igroshum, sheshamu based, the evaluations that based gives on property for it to be collected for a debt. Nichse love lemalve, the property, the buyer and the lender. The igros mazon, support documents. Chalitza, documents of chalitza when the woman removes her brother-in-law's shoe after her husband has died without children. Umiyunin, when a girl whose mother or brother has arranged a rabbinic marriage for her and she refuses the marriage. The shtire brurin, and documents shikosim poloni bira poloni dayan, poloni lepoloni. These are the documents where each party selects who is going to represent them on the Beis Din, the igros Beis Din, and the letters of Beis Din. Perush piske dinim, this is the psak din. Vigros reshus, and letters of reshus. Perush shela shalom, sha'adam shaleach lechaver. These are gift letters that people send to their friends. Nowadays we send emails, so it wouldn't be so the same issue. The Hilchos, and some people prohibit the writing of just friendly letters. Umafarshim igro shel reshus shtire mimshala, and there are those people that explain that shtire reshus are the governmental decrees. V'ken kasa bahag, and this is what the bahag said. Geyar reshus umafarshim rabbanan pitke de reshusa, that this is the government documents. Aval diske lo, I'm not sure exactly what it is. It's also some type of proclamation. We're not allowed to do it. My father, the Rosh, wrote like the first opinion. These are letters sent from one person to a friend. Ein kosim shtirei chov. You're not allowed to write loan document. Yachol lahamtin lechotam ad HaMoed, because we can wait to write them until after the Yontif is over. V'im enu mamino v'halove tzarech lamaos, if the lender doesn't trust him and the borrower needs the money now, lemoed, for to use on Yontif. or she'ein l'sofer ma yochal, or the sofer doesn't have food. Mutter, then it's mutter. Yesh matirim לכתוב על ידי שינוי. Some people allow you to write with a shinui, with a change, right? Kagon be equal. Instead of if you look at kasav ashuris, it's normally written squarely. If you write it round, or be ikum, or if you make the lines so that they're not straight but they're bent. V'riva haya oser. The riva says is prob. Kevan de'afilu ozachas aser lagia, because even one letter itself is prohibited to correct. So how can it be that you can write more than that? V'kol sheken zeh shu kasav Gomor, and all the more so, this is you're actually writing. Abba Rabba, Kashirotzim li'afos kasav kagon sores osin ken. Sometimes when we're writing invitations and things like this, we want to make something, a fancy letter, we change the kasav in different ways. We write in funny things, and people look at it in a beautiful way. Not that there's something wrong with this. And therefore, the Riva says, since sometimes this is used, it's viewed as a appropriate way of writing, therefore it's always prohibited. Ve'afilu mi shekoseh va'osios behipuch shemitzad hasheni nirin ubaos tzad aksav eino nirin. Even if you're writing them on the back of the writing, I don't understand how you do this. They can be seen from the other side of the paper, but not from the paper side you're writing on. I don't know what this is. Haya osar. He says this is also prohibited. V'lo haya mater lichtov ela osios chatuchos. You're only allowed to outline the letter. The yud shekula guf echad yase nekuda achas, and yud, which is one thing, you just make a dot. You don't form the shape of a yud. V'yesh she'osinosa igul katan, and some people make it a little circle. V'avid nior zal kasev tshuva she'ela b'chol HaMoed, and my father, the Rosh, very famously, wrote a tshuva on Chol HaMoed. V'hiter li lahatiko techashiv davar avid, and he allowed me to copy the tshuva before it was sent to the person that was asking, because that he felt was a davar avid, meaning if we don't make the copy now, right, we will in fact not have a copy of what he wrote in the future. So therefore, it's something that we would lose, and anything that would be a loss that couldn't be made up, he said, would be allowed. This is, again, you have to go back and discuss what a davar avid is. Is it losing capital? And you could say this is similar to losing capital in that the tshuva will not be available to us in the future. Danin b'chol HaMoed. We're allowed to do a din Torah in Chol HaMoed. Bein dinei mamos, bein dinei fashis. Doesn't matter what type of din Torah it is, even a din Torah for money like we have today, or a capital case classically in the time of the Mishnah. Umakin lemi shelo yikabel lavadin, and we're allowed to give makos to someone that does not accept the psak. Now, the Yerushalmi says that this is because of tzarkei rabbi, meaning people need to have their cases tried. If they don't have their cases tried in a reasonable time frame, they get upset and problems occur. And therefore, because it's tzarkei rabbi, we're allowed to do it on Chol HaMoed. The Mordechai quotes the Rivya that if you're suing because you need this money in Chol HaMoed, meaning the person owes me money, he's not paying me, and therefore I cannot do the things that I need to do in Chol HaMoed. I can't buy the things that I need for Yantav and so on, therefore it's mutter. Or if someone will not be around, meaning they've come to town for Yantav, and after Yantav they're leaving, and so it may cause a great delay in trying this case, but because the people may not be around. Meaning, according to Mordechai, there has to be a reason why this has to be done in Yantav. We're allowed to do a din Torah in Yantav if it has to be done. On Chol HaMoed, if it has to be done on Chol HaMoed. However, if both people live in the same town, and the Beis Din is always present, so they can try it next week. They don't have to try it now. Again, that's a machlokas between the Yerushalmi and the Mordechai and Ravya and so on. So this is the minhag clearly is that we do not in general, do Dinei Torah on Chol HaMoed. We don't write Gittin on Chol HaMoed. Many of these things that they talk about, we don't do. However, I imagine if there would be a case where it might be impossible to do it in the future, or something like that, or in the case of Mian, which Bechlal doesn't exist anymore, the girl refusing a marriage arranged by her mother or brothers when she was still a child, to write out her objection to it, we might not do that until afterwards, but clearly if her birthday is on Yantif or sometime during Chol HaMoed, she could clearly come before the Beis Din and state her refusal because she can't do it later. Meaning it's again, Davar Aved, something that would be lost. Again, I want to say, writing calligraphy is certainly prohibited on Chol HaMoed. Writing Ksav Stam, writing in the Sefer Torah, tefillin, mezuzos, if you don't need them. I mean, tefillin most people don't wear anymore, but for those Ashkenazim, Chutz La'aretz, tefillin, and there's a problem with tefillin, and you could write tefillin or fix tefillin, and those things that could be fixed for them in Chol HaMoed. Mezuzos, if there's not a mezuzah, one could be written on Chol HaMoed. Again, the issue is it would have to be written without being paid because of the issues that we've discussed in the past. However, making notes in cursive writing with a ballpoint pen, which is certainly not a Malachas Uman, it's not something that we want to last for a long time and so on, such a thing would be mutter. Writing Chidushei Torah that you are afraid that you would forget, the poskim say, is like the Rosh allowing his tshuva that he wrote on Chol HaMoed to be copied on Chol HaMoed, because if not, the ideas might be forgotten. Anyway, as I said, most of this halacha for most of the Siman for most people is not shayach, is not relevant in our times, but there are a few things it's good to be aware of that we just shouldn't write down every funny thing we have to do. By the way, the many poskim in the 20th century talked about shopping lists. So you can write a shopping list with a ballpoint pen, and that's not a problem. No one does that anymore. They put it on their phone, and they don't write a list. So many of the things that might have been mutter in the past, not necessarily mutter now, because we can create the record in an electronic form, which would not require writing, which would, of course, typing on a typewriter, fixing an electronic signature, and so on. There is no prohibition of doing such things on Chol HaMoed, and everyone should have a wonderful day.